Aloha, and welcome to another episode of Maunalua Past, Present, and Future. This is Kendrick Chang again from Zoom Studio, aka my home, here for another episode with Livable Hawaii Kai Hui. And we're very lucky today to start off the new year with having another major partner in our Maunalua community, which is Mr. Matt Glei, who's a facilitator at Hawaii Kai Strong. Welcome back, Matt.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, and Matt, I mean, we had you actually a year and a half ago about Hawaii Kai Strong, and we thought this was a good time to do an update, especially recently we've had a lot of rain, for example, but I know you want to talk about another natural disaster, but why don't we start with kind of an update of what you've been up to this past year?
Sure. So 2020 was a very interesting year. We traditionally sort of teach a CERT course, which is Community Emergency Response Team course for various communities. And so in January, we taught in Hauula, and in February, we taught in Maunalua. And we did a tsunami public outreach meeting at Cocoa Head District Park, which was what we used to do every quarter. But then March happened, and then COVID-19 appeared, and there was a shutdown order for Hawaii. So basically all public activity had to cease. Nobody wanted to catch this disease. So in addition, we did support some food distribution, points of distribution over the island. Several of our members were very active in that. So that was 2020, it was special.
Great. And now that we're in the new year, what's your plans for 2021?
Well, we acquired a Zoom license because with being unable to sort of meet in person, we acquired a Zoom license. So we can now host up to 100 people in a virtual presentation, which supports social distancing and safety. And this will be an important way for people to access this information, even after the vaccine. The reality is we're going to be in masks and social distancing for a while yet. So basically, we then joined the effort to educate people, not only here in Hawaii Kai, but everywhere, about wildfire. We had never really covered wildfire for people before. But Livable Hawaii Kai Hui basically said, come, help us get this out to the public. And so what we're doing now is we're sort of starting over. And we're going to meet 6 times a year instead of 4. And we're going to start with wildfire. And I'll give you a preview tonight, but the reality is things like wildfire, building a kit for any disaster, hurricane, flood, earthquake, tsunami, those we've always covered, but we're now adding wildfire and making sure you're ready for a disaster.
Great. And tell you the truth, it's hard to really visualize how much of an issue wildfires are in Hawaii. Could you share a little bit more about why wildfires?
Sure. And I learned a lot in prepping this. So the reality is land burned in Hawaii has increased 400% since 1960. And I know you weren't born, but that's okay. Due to human ignitions and invasive fire-prone species. 99% of wildfires in Hawaii are started by people, either accidentally or on purpose. And so I was really amazed to find out that the percentage of land that burns in Hawaii is very similar to the percentage that burns every year in the US West. I had no idea. So essentially, even though we're way smaller than the US West, the same percentage of land burns in Hawaii every year, as in those fires you've seen on TV in the US West. It's a very scary thing to consider. There is a lot that you can do and your neighbors can do to reduce your risks, if wildfires happen. One is creating and maintaining your defensible space around your home. And that's more like maintaining your safety. There's hardening your home, and we'll talk more about it. And then there's having and practicing a plan. If a fire breaks out, whether it's wildfire caused or just a house fire, the answer is you want your family to get out and to be safe. And so we're going to talk you through that process. Now, the more that you and your neighbors do this, the better protected your neighborhood will become. So we'll talk you through that as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of that, I know you're about to show a visual to kind of give us more visual representation of how much of a problem it is in our state. But, I guess for me, it's just a little hard at the moment to really picture how much of an issue it is.
And it was for me as well. So here's wildfire incidents for the 6 main Hawaiian islands up until 2014. And of course, there have been many since. But if you look at it, look at the Big Island here. There are major wildfires that have happened. And the bigger the dot in that map, the bigger the fire was. So the Big Island, Maui, Oahu, Lanai, Molokai, and Kauai have all had major fires. And in fact, in recent years, it's added to it because, I remember in Oahu, during a hurricane on the Waianae side, we had major fires that actually burned down power poles and also burned down phone lines in the process. And Maui, of course, has had many examples of that as well in the last few years. So this is not something that's getting better. It's getting worse. And one of the reasons that if you just look at this map of Hawaii Island, it's actually very scary if you think about it. So,
yeah. So, I mean, what can we do, and specifically, how can we protect our homes and our families?
Well, first thing we have to talk about is ignition zones. And so the distance from 5 to 10 feet from your home is the most critical area. If you have burnable stuff there, you're in deep trouble. The second zone, and we're going to talk about details in a minute, but is from 5 to 10 to 30 feet. And that has a different meaning in terms of protection. And then from 30 feet to 100 feet is another zone. So you need to think of it as 3 zones: close, medium, far away.
And then within each zone, what do you do to, in terms of being proactive for each, zone and layer within, this map?
Well, sorry. So zone 1, that's 5 to 10 feet. Make sure there are no flammable zone materials in that zone. So if you have lumber under your house or you have dead brush near the house, you need to get rid of that. If you have propane tanks, you need to clear space around them. In fact, any sort of flammable stuff like gasoline, propane, any other thing should not be in your home or even near your home. Here in my home, I actually built a little shed that's about 30 feet away that has all my spare propane and gasoline tanks, so that if they were to go up for any reason, they would not be in my home. If there's vegetation near your windows, you need to remove that, because if they catch on fire, it's going to come through your windows. So you want to remove all dead and dying vegetation near your home. If you have tree limbs hanging over your house, you want to make sure those are cleared, and you want to keep your roof and your gutters clean, because if a fire happens even half a mile away, the embers will come and may set that stuff on fire. So, as I said earlier, no stacked lumber near or under the home. If you have firewood, keep it away. Zone 2 is different. It's from 10 to 30 feet. So this is the case where tall grass sets bushes on fire, which then sets trees on fire. And so what you really want to do is remove all that dried and dead vegetation and keep vegetation separated from each other, so you don't have a wall of flames. If you have tree limbs within 10 feet of the ground or 10 feet of the bushes below them, you want to trim those so that the bushes don't set the trees on fire, because trees create a lot of embers that will blow around your house and mess you up. And then the zone 3 is 30 to 100. Now, where I live, 100 feet is well within my neighbor's yard. So you need to look at all the things that could be happening over there that you might want to chat with them about and see if you can mitigate that. So if you have wild land near your home, you want to think about how is that a risk for my home? And if you live next to a mountain or an unmanaged space, you really want to think about that.
Good. No, and thank you for all that information, especially breaking out different steps for each zone. But what else can we do to protect our homes?
Well, you can harden your home. So let's say that you have a roof that's made up of cedar shingles. If you have to replace that roof, now's the time to find something like clay or concrete tile, metal, asphalt, which will be much more resistant to fire. I've lived in homes like that, and even a bottle rocket can set fire to your home. So the reality is, now you're not going to go out and do this tomorrow, but the reality is if you have to change your roof, now's the time to invest in a fireproof one. The same thing when you're making repairs or additions. If you're adding a room to your home, you want to make sure it's as fireproof as you can make it. And you can usually talk to your contractor about making it safe. When I replaced the windows in my home, I made sure I had double pane windows and doors, because they're way more fireproof than single panes. We used to have jalousies, and a lot of homes here in Hawaii have jalousies, but they are not fireproof at all. So if you do replace them, double pane windows are the best. If you live in a home that's sort of on post and beam, you may want to cover the vents under the home with 8-inch metal screening or mesh in order to prevent embers from blowing under. Because if things blow under and they're on fire, it may set fire to your home. And then, in addition, look at xeriscaping or using native plants. Native plants here in Hawaii are very fireproof by comparison to many of the other options.
And then how, we talk about being proactive in terms of protecting our home, but, in the event a fire does occur, at our home, how can I protect my family, or, what can I do, in that situation?
Well, it's not just wildfire. It's also just a house fire. House fires are very common here in Hawaii and everywhere around the United States. So the reality is, whether it's wildfire or not, you can sit down and you can draw a plan out on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. You just show all the doors and windows, label the rooms, and look at how could I get out of the master bedroom. There may be only one door, but there may be a window. So the question is, how would you get out of that room if you were trapped? And we teach this in community emergency response training, but most people have never thought about it. So you mark 2 ways out of every room, and mark your smoke alarms and mark your fire extinguishers if you have one. Usually fire extinguishers are near the kitchen. If you have an emergency kit or a go bag, which we'll talk about in a little bit, mark where you keep those. And you need to say, if we get out, where do we meet? So in this case, we're saying, this is the backyard, this is plan B, but if we all come out of the back of the house, this is where we're going to meet. And if we're in the front yard, we're going to meet here. It could be, your neighbor's yard across the street. You don't want it to be next to a fire hydrant. And then the answer is practice your plan. So walk your family through this. It's especially important if you have kids, kapuna, people with mobility challenges, to sort of walk through so they understand this is what we would do if this happens. And by the way, this is much more likely to happen in a house fire rather than a wildfire. But the plan is the same. Get out, be safe, call 911.
Okay. And I want to go back. You mentioned about having a go bag. So what exactly is a go bag?
Well, after, as I said earlier, with pets and people, you have to think about what you're going to do. But after Marco Polo, I chatted with several survivors, and they basically said, we had 5 minutes to get out. Somebody came to our door, banged on it, said, leave. And so a go bag is something, a backpack generally, that is near the exit if you have to leave suddenly. So if somebody gives you think about it. If somebody gives you 5 minutes to get out of your house, what are you going to take with you? You don't have time to run around. So I have a go bag. It has my ID, my passports, my driver's licenses, medical insurance cards, important papers like, deed to the house, insurance, 2 weeks of medication, spare glasses, contacts, the change of clothes, non-perishable foods, mostly snacks. Like, how would you get through the first 12 hours? Flashlight, batteries, money, small bills. So if you can't get to an ATM, how are you going to survive? Phone charger, whistle, weather radio, water, a first aid kit. I have all that in my go bag, which is not a huge bag. It's basically a backpack. I can grab it, I can run out the door, and I know I'm going to survive 24 hours.
Okay, and then, no, and that's great, but what could I do to not only help my own family, but also help my own neighbors too, since, we all live in the same, block?
Well, first, having a plan that gets your family out. 2, having something like a go bag. But you can also talk to your neighbors. Most of your neighbors may or may not be thinking about this. So if you've thought about this, you can say, here's what I'm doing. How would you like to do that? The more neighbors that do this, the better off you are. So if it's just your house, you might protect your house. But the answer is, if your neighborhood goes up, the more neighbors that are prepared by clearing the brush, making all the things we've said, the better off you are. There is assistance. There's an organization called the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, and they're located on the Big Island, but they're absolutely willing to come and help any community in the state of Hawaii. And if you decide to do this as in a formal way, because you can do this by yourself, but if you do it in a formal way, it only takes 8 or more homes to create a Firewise USA community or site. And they have a lot of help for how to do it. They sort of walk you through the process and everything. So if you want to contact them, the information is on the screen. I've given you their phone number, their email, and their website. If you go to hawaiiwildfire.org, you'll find an amazing amount of information on how to protect your home and how to join together with others to protect your home.
No, and that's great. And this is actually a growing thing in Hawaii. How many communities do you have that are Firewise, ready or part of the program?
Well, right now we have 15 Firewise communities, and as you can see, 10 of them are on the Big Island, because you remember how scary that map was for the Big Island. They've had a lot of experience with fires. Maui has 3, Molokai has 1, and Oahu has 1. So here on Oahu, it's Kamilanui Valley, which is farm agriculture, and we also have Mariners Cove, which is right next to it. And so they've really found, since fires in 2017, that this allows them to protect their land much better.
Wow. No, really appreciate you sharing this, Matt. And for those who are interested, how could they reach out to you and become part of Hawaii Kai Strong?
Sure. Well, we are here. We've been doing this since 2014. We've been trying to get people ready for disasters. And this year we're adding wildfire as one of them. You can reach us at hawaiikaistrong@yahoo.com. We're on Facebook as Hawaii Kai Strong. And there's my phone number as the facilitator. So I'm not running Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization. On the other hand, if you're interested in talking about it, I can describe the realities of how all this works, and we'll be happy to help other communities. I'm helping other communities here on Oahu, in particular, like Punaluu, Kaneohe, Kahalu, and others who've had significant things. And as you know, Waianae has had some big wildfire issues over the last several years. So glad to help in any way we can.
And thank you, Matt, for joining us today to share more about the good work you've been doing and for this latest update for 2021. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me, and we're anxious to get going on starting up again after the COVID pandemic.
Yes, we all are, and hopefully, maybe the next time we do an update, we're back in the studio at Kaimuki High School.
That would be lovely. It's a great place.
Yeah. And we just want to thank all of our guests for tuning in for the latest episode of Maunalua Past, Present, and Future. Want to thank Livable Hawaii Kai Hui, who is the sponsor of this program, and also to Ōlelo Community Media for this forum for all communities to present their stories here in Hawaii. So this is Kendrick Chang. Mahalo, and thank you.
Mahalo.